Have you been doing lots of these?
Yeah. It's like such a weird thing, but
I know. So how's lockdown going? You're in the Bay Area, right? So you were one of the first places in the country to actually shelter in place. So it's been what, 4 weeks now?
yeah, it's been just over 3 for me. I was down in LA. We had our last race canceled the night before the race, so we were down there waiting to see if we'd be able to, and had to make the last minute drive home, and I've been locked down ever since.
Okay. And so how has that sort of affected your daily training? What would a training day have looked like before this, and what does it look like now?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, as a cyclist, there are still a lot of ways that you can train. So I'm able to ride outside. I have Zwift set up here. And I was also able to take a lot of equipment from my gym. So my garage is now a little bit of a home gym. So instead of going to the gym, I'm working out here and doing everything obviously close to home, but I'm able to train in much the similar way as before. I would say the biggest difference is that the periodization of training is a bit tricky when we don't have a race on the calendar.
So how do you adjust for that? I mean, I feel like that mental aspect has to be such a huge part of your training, knowing you're working toward this specific thing. So with that all sort of on pause, how do you adjust for that mentally and physically?
Yeah, I would say that's really the question on the front of everyone's mind. And we all have a different approach. I think for me, it's been really important to take that time to deal with the overall situation. It's a really stressful situation, whether or not your Olympic dreams are tied up in it or financially, even just in terms of daily life. This is a huge change for people around the world.
Mhm.
So for me, it's been a lot about making sure that my training is not using too much mental stress. So I did take a pretty easy week, really ride for fun, not ride outside if it was raining the first week that we were in lockdown and really take time to process that. And now I'm back to my normal routine. So for us, our approach has been to go back to base training and really, not be doing a lot of high intensity training. It's a little bit easier mentally. It's also physically, builds that base back up that we've kind of lost already from the beginning of the year. And hopefully, if we do get to race this season, we'll have at least a month or two of notice, and
Mhm.
that's when we really go back to that high intensity training. So from my perspective, my job right now is to stay fit, be creative, work on my weaknesses, build that base, and also build this mental and physical reservoir of energy so that when I do have a date on the calendar, I can hit the ground running and not be burned out from, a lot of training and quarantine with uncertain
Mhm.
goals. Instead, have that really strong base and be able to really kind of hit the ground running in terms of those last couple of races.
Is it tricky to not have training partners or maybe as many training partners as you would normally have?
Absolutely. I'd say from a training perspective, that's a huge part of what we do, is use other people to push ourselves. For me, I'm lucky to be able to ride with my boyfriend still and to have great roads that I can still go outside on. Uh,
Mhm.
but I think also the social aspect of it is big for a lot of cyclists when you're spending 5, 6 hours out on a long ride. That's really difficult to do completely by yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And so is your sense of the World Cup season at this point like it's essentially on pause? I mean, do you have any idea whether you might be racing this season?
I hope so. I'm definitely hopeful that we will get to line up this year, and I'm doing everything I can to prepare with that goal in mind. But of course, that won't be for a few months, if at all.
Yeah. Um, and then the Olympics, obviously, that was, I would imagine, what your entire season was shaped around, and a career long goal to be there. Where I guess at what point did you kind of start feeling like that probably wasn't going to be a reality?
Yeah, I think things, things in some ways moved in slow motion. I think we were all at home and, the days felt long, but also within the course of, a week and a half, we went from getting the first lockdown to having pretty much every athletic event for the year canceled. And I think for me, when I started to hear some of those bigger series canceled, the NBA season was put off for this year. And when I heard those types of things, as well as the extension of the lockdown in California, uh, it became clear that it would be pretty difficult to have the Olympics this year, and it would be impossible to have a safe and fair Olympics for every sport.
Hmm. And so what was your kind of reaction when you did finally get the word that, this is not happening?
I think for me, the week of uncertainty was actually more difficult.
Yeah.
When it started to look like things were not going to happen safely and fairly this summer, I think we were all kind of waiting for the news to hit. But at that point, we had to prepare as if the Olympics were happening. So,
Mhm.
waking up every day and staying on that training trajectory towards the Olympics is really difficult when you wake up and train and think, oh, but is it actually happening?
Right.
But I think for me, getting the solidification that it was postponed, but also that we got the new date so quickly, is something that I give the IOC and the Olympic Committee a huge kudos for, because for us that's a big step in terms of being able to plan our training. Obviously, this year is not set in stone yet, but we had the opportunity to reset and be ready to hit that Olympic buildup again in 2021.
So when do you start actually working toward that? Knowing those new dates, I mean, I suppose you're always working toward it, but like when do you actually go into high gear now that you know that's when the dates are going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things a lot of people don't totally appreciate about the Olympics is that it's not one year. It's, been 4 years focused on this specific event. So we've been thinking about Tokyo for 4 years, but the Olympic dream is something we've been working towards, or I've been working towards since I started riding a bike.
Hmm.
So for me, this is in some ways a big delay, but in other ways, if you look at that whole trajectory of making it to the Olympic Games, it's a small delay in that process. So, in terms of this year, we're working on being really flexible. I think that's actually something that will serve me well in the rest of my career. And this is a great chance to develop that. But in terms of next year, it hopefully will be a very standard season, given that they've moved the Olympics not just to another month, but an entire year. So we kind of get a do over on
Hmm.
preparation this fall and in next spring.
Hmm. How much are you in contact with your team and your coaches and everything while this is going on?
A lot. Yeah, there's been a lot of communication, both in terms of structuring my coaching plan, but also for our team in terms of, seeing what we can do this year and making sure that we're in constant communication about information becoming available.
Hmm.
And I think in these moments, I'm particularly grateful to have a team of coaches around me that are thinking on their feet and really managing the situation, and also that I know really well and have worked with
Hmm.
for a long time. Because I think when you have those processes and they're kind of tried and true, you have your formula. It's easier to change a variable than
Hmm.
when you're trying something completely new, and it's hard to kind of course correct when things don't go as planned.
Right.
And then in terms of the team side, having Scott SRAM behind me is really an incredible thing in a moment like this. First of all, because our team is really like a family, so I think it's great to have that emotional support in terms of what we're going through, what we can plan, and how we're going to get through it as a team. But also to have people around me that have so much experience dealing with different types of adversity. Between Frishy and Nino, there's certainly a lot of race wins, but also a lot of challenges overcome.
Yeah, and I guess I mean it is sort of metaphoric to racing, like so often things don't go as you plan that I guess you're sort of trained in a way to mentally adjust to things not working out how you might want them to.
Absolutely.
One of the things I was wondering about that I feel like would be just so hard to simulate and that must be such a huge part of preparation for a big goal like the Olympics is that lack of competition that you're not going to have. I mean, maybe you'll have at some point, but that you're not having at this point this year. How do you sort of make up for that? That having other people push you and having races to use as training platforms. I mean, how do you adjust for that missing link?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, when I am training to race and training really hard, oftentimes my training can be as hard, if not harder, than the races themselves. So we do have a lot of ways to get that intensity in, to be practicing race simulations, and really pushing it. But I think for me, the one thing is that, when you're getting into race fitness, you're doing so to be able to perform in races. So it's going to be an interesting question of how we manage that if, the rest of the race season falls away. Because
Hmm.
at this moment, we're counting on racing, hopefully starting in August, which
Hmm.
means that we'll be ramping up for that date and having one peak this year instead of two. Obviously, a shorter season, but I think that we'll have to get creative and really discuss the options if that racing falls off the calendar and it's a year without any of that type of intensity.
Hmm. I guess it's probably just day by day at this point, not worrying too much about the what ifs of the rest of the season.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to see, though. I think one of the challenges that we're all trying to manage is staying fit enough, but also fresh enough. So
Hmm.
this kind of fitness freshness often work against each other, where a lot of people, I'm sure, are hitting it hard, doing their quarantine training full gas. And as I said, when we find out we're going to race, if they have a month and they have to really double down, you might have used up a lot of mental energy. Whereas if you can stay fit but mentally relaxed and deal with the stress, it can often allow you to like really ramp up when the time comes.
So how do you do that? Yoga, meditation, like that seems like it'd be such an unprecedented sort of challenge to deal with. And the not overtraining part too. I mean, because you have this time and this clear calendar, it's like I can see the temptation to just be like hitting it hard all the time.
Yeah, I think that for me is one of the hardest things about being a professional athlete and not, being just a recreational athlete where you can kind of be fit all year. For us, we're trying to be moderately fit and then really, really fit on one day
Hmm.
or 2 days in the season. So hopefully this year that's for World Championships if we get to race it, or for World Cup. So for me, it's really about keeping those long-term goals in mind and understanding that. If we do restructure our season to look a lot like a normal season, we're basically in November, December right now.
Hmm.
So I think that's a really hard mindset shift and something that, everyone's going to approach differently because there's no perfect answer.
So I mean, are you mixing in other things that maybe you wouldn't be doing in a normal season to kind of just diversify or keep your mind maybe not focused on this as much?
I think, everyone who's in quarantine, we obviously have a bit more time on our hands. So doing projects at home, I'm taking a class, those types of things can be positive distractions, I think, in a certain way.
Hmm.
Because as you said, it is pretty tempting just to fall into full gas training right now, which I think would be a mistake. But, on the other hand, I'm still training full time. I'm
Hmm.
doing pretty much the same in terms of hours on the bike, maybe more in terms of hours in the gym than I would normally at this time of year. I would say
Hmm.
the difference is how we're structuring the intensity. And for me, having less intensity or just kind of managing the intensity differently can make it less mentally taxing. So I think it's important that we're paying attention to the life stress that's happening right now. Uh,
Hmm.
but we're still absolutely filling my days with training and focus on rest and recovery when I'm not on the bike.
Hmm. So what would you say your lockdown guilty pleasure is?
Ooh, I have. What is it?
Tiger King.
No, I haven't watched it yet. I'm so excited though. I've heard so many good things. Um, yeah, I don't know if I have a guilty pleasure. I've baked a lot of things, so that means I've eaten a lot of baked goods. But again, very lucky I can still ride my bike, or the baked goods might become a problem. But yeah, I mean, I started doing like one of my funniest quarantine pastimes. I've started knitting a little bit. So I'm knitting like headbands right now, little ear warmers, just in time
Yeah.
for summer. Um, but yeah, I think my funniest quarantine look so far has been in the Normatec boots, knitting and watching TV. That's probably my best look.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to check back in after you see Tiger King.
I
Um,
know. I know.
or
Yeah.
Love is Blind. They're both equally sort of
And
deliciously trashy.
maybe today.
All right. Well, thanks for the time, Kate. Appreciate it. And good luck with the season when it starts.